caught up in the Ohiki again.
Yeah. Ohiki music will get you every time.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Talking Chickens number 76 with Dan Honor, master breeder, author, poultry historian. He is the Mediterranean man. If you need to know anything about Mediterraneans, and we've been talking about buffs before we came on, and I think we'll have a really nice discussion today. Today is Tuesday, as we're doing this live on YouTube and Facebook. Tuesday, the 28th of July in 2026. It's been a nice day today, I guess, but I've napped a couple 3 hours of it. I have no clue why, but I went out and did some work, and it come noon, and we ate lunch, and well, I'm retired. I retired for a little bit. So other than that, I don't have a whole lot. I would like to thank all of our sponsors. Remember, if you're on YouTube and Facebook, to like, subscribe, and share. We're only 5 away from the magic 500 number on YouTube. So I thank everybody that has subscribed in the past month. I think these lives have really picked it up, and I think that's really a good thing. There's a couple things we'll talk about before we get done. Terry and I are starting a new transport business. There's a need, and they always said, if you see a need, fill it. So we're going to try to fill a need, and we still have some parameters and things to work out, but we hope to get that started hopefully in September, and that way you don't have to mess with the post office or fly in your birds if we're on a route. So that's the way we're going to handle that. We'll go into more of that later. There'll be, we'll have it on here. There'll be a new Facebook business page, and it will be, I'm not sure of the name just yet. I've got 2 of them. It's the same letters, trying to figure out how to do it, what we want it to be, but it'll be on there. So we'll link it to here, and we ask you to come there. And unfortunately, there'll be no comments. You'll have to message or email or something to get to it. So to get to ask questions, because I'm not doing anything. Things will be between the sender and me, and it's not a general public thing that everybody needs to know, as far as all kinds of the small details. With that, Dan, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Glad to be here. Usually when you think of buff, I get mentioned, that Marcus Davidson was one of the well-known breeders at the time, and I had gone down to visit him once, and he was getting up in age, but I'd gotten some buff leghorns from him. And while I was there, I decided to ask him where he got his start with buff leghorns. And he said he had gotten them in 1912, and he'd gotten them from Monmouth Farm, who was a big breeder at the time that had won 5 years in a row best pen in Madison Square Garden, and apparently they were the only ones that ever did that. And so he kept them going for 65 years, but he was off to a pretty good start. And Monmouth Farm had got them right from the original importers, which was August Arnold in Pennsylvania. And so if you have buff leghorns, you can pretty much trace them right back to the originals.
Right back to the beginning,
yeah. And of course, the buff color came from the Cochins, and the color was transferred to other breeds by crossing them with the Cochins. And Marcus told me that about that time, 1912, 1915, when he was starting, he decided to really perfect the buff rocks, because he figured if he could get the buff rocks as good in color as the Cochins, then he could easily put the buff rocks into the Wyandottes, into the Orpingtons, anything, much quicker than going back to Cochins, who had feather legs and very loose feathering. And he had up to 20 matings, he said, using white rocks, Rhode Island Reds, buff Cochins. And I thought, well, that was pretty smart, And then he told me that on the Leghorns, he had a Leghorn house, which he still had. and he had 10 pens in there, and he kept 5 females in each pen, and he kept those 5 females so he didn't have to so they didn't have to go through a pecking order again. And he would mate them up with a male in each pen, and he would raise some chicks from each of the pens and toe punch them. And then he would sell eggs and chicks from those birds. No, he'd go around and he'd change males so that he had 20 matings from 10 pens every year. And that kept him from inbreeding so much. And then he would sell eggs between, when he didn't know the parentage of those birds. And of course, customers wouldn't know the difference anyway, what they came out of, unless he was specifically selling them from a pen. But I thought that was a great way of making use of what birds you had, 20 matings instead of 10 with the same birds. And yeah. And of course, his place was kind of unique in the fact that it had a lot of shade all around it. For buffs, that's great. And then I always heard that he had some cows around and always had buttermilk and milk to feed the chickens as well. And I can't imagine that didn't hurt having.
So no, they say they're lactose intolerant, but I remember my grandma used to raise the meat chickens, and I mean they just rolled the buttermilk and everything to them, and I'm telling you, I don't know, maybe they were, but they sure did taste good. No, and they grew good, and they were tough.
Even in the 70s when I started, we had dairy cows, and we had a stuff we called it bran mash, but it was a ground up feed that went to everything pretty much. But we would mix old milk that we didn't sell, or it got contaminated or something, in with that for the hogs, the chickens, just about everything that would eat it. The dogs, the cats, and they just tore that stuff up.
Yep. Yeah.
It would make them hogs get real big.
Yeah.
I think the thing you had to watch was in the hot weather, if you mixed it like a wet feed, it could go rancid if you didn't keep the dishes cleaned well, Outside of that, I think they thrived on
I think
any
so
milk
too.
products.
Well, that's how I first met Dan. I'll preface that was we both collect old stuff, and I think that's how I first got the meeting. But if you look back in a lot of those old American poultry journals, and there's all kinds of buttermilk mash recipes, and so it was very common back in the day because they used what they had. We didn't go buy it; you had to use what you.
Well, hell, they didn't even have it to buy. I mean, there wasn't all this pre-mix and all these things. What worked for one animal, you figured worked for another one, and most of the time, it did.
Well, somebody sent me a picture of this thing, and they didn't know what it was, and come to find out, it was a green bone cutter. Mm-hmm. And apparently, they used to put a lot of meat scraps and ground up bones into the rations back then, and I thought, well, that was interesting.
It wasn't what we're used to as the pork and bone meal. It was what they did before they made that meal with the old grinders. And I remember going to Craig Schaefer's family run a meat market, and we would get all the old scraps that he would save in a barrel to take home for the laying flock and throw it out there for them to eat. So it's actually a good conditioning feed.
Oh, yeah. I used to buy suet.
Yep.
Woods used to have a big butcher. Yep. And you could stop in there, and I mean, it was just cheaper shit. I mean, we had bar soap. Nobody, all the DIY stuff hadn't started yet with all this. We make this and that and this and that. But I mean, you could get it was pennies. I'd bring home a whole box of scrap, and it was better towards wintertime, right? Because summertime you had to roll like crazy and hope they ate it quick. Yeah. But I mean, we'd take it and throw it out there, and everything out there, just they'd eat it and they shine like new money. Everything was in really good shape. Of course, they were outside. Yep. That's before we knew how to condition chicken.
Always go fishing all the time, so we'd come home and clean the fish in the backyard.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. For all that, until my grandma started hollering that the eggs were tasting like fish. Feed them all those fish cleanings and guts and everything. The chickens would take off with those fish guts and run like crazy. But All
Yep.
that stuff was good for them.
Cod liver oil will do that too.
Yep.
Make the eggs taste fishy.
Yeah, that's all we'd feed. I mean, remember, if you were having hatchability problems,
Yeah.
you up the cod liver oil,
Mhm.
and that stuff always was expensive.
Yeah.
Even when we were young, that's a long time ago. But that stuff was expensive then. You go to the drugstore and get that little bottle, a little glass bottle of cod liver oil. It wouldn't go very far, but you didn't take much.
One of my favorite books was Hubbard's Poultry Secrets. I don't know if either of you have ever read that.
I have that.
Oh, do you? Yeah. It was written very close by where I live here, and it was. He was a superintendent for Barnum, who was one of the circus guys, and
Barnum and Bailey.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was a big exhibitor in Madison Square Garden of Orpingtons, and Black and Buff. And the book was very good, but it had a lot of. It was only like 100 pages, but really good reading. A lot of tips, as far as when to hatch your birds, how to. He watched some game birds, and that was back before they had commercial mashes, and it's just a really good book, a very easy read, but you'll get a lot of good hints out of that.
I think so too, and I have
You'll
that
find
book.
that book. A lot of these companies are putting out CDs of old books, and I've seen that on those CDs, so it's pretty readily available.
You can get it
back on Amazon.
Online, and Amazon too has reprinted it.
And I'll tell you what's neat about that book, because I read that part, and I had always had trouble with pasty chicks. I was always, especially with coaching, I'm always doing it. And I read that, and the first year, maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I did exactly what he was talking about. When those chicks come out of the hatcher and went into the brooder, they got nothing but water and fine grit. And then that brought back memories of Wade Bullington, who was famous back for Big White Wyandottes and everything when I was a kid and lived right down the road from me. I go over there and all his chicks would be running, babies, they'd be in the office. There'd be no food in there. Well, that just seemed strange to me. But for 3 days, after the yolk is absorbed, and then he would mix not high protein, he would take cornmeal and he'd put in with that grit and get them eating it. And then a little more cornmeal and then rolled oats at the time. And then after about 4 days, then he would go to that mash, because instead of pushing that 22% protein right in them, he kind of lets the whole thing, and that made sense to me. I don't know why, and I did it for 2 years, and I never had a pasty chick. I never did anything else different, except they did not get food, and because the hens call them to water first. Get the water in them, get them drinking good, and then everything else is all right.
Another thing he did in his book, he said to dig a ditch and put oats in it, soaked oats, cover it with a board and let it sprout, and then pick the board up, and they've got sprouted oats for days, And I thought that was a very good idea. And then he said, if you're hatching birds during their normal hatching and growing season, the chicks have that tender shoots and sprouts, starting everywhere. And boy, do they love those things,
Yep.
And he really knew how to condition them. And, the book is just a nice little book.
It is. It's everything is basically on gut health. I mean, really, it builds an immune system, everything is, and they don't get shit, because they're basically strong enough to fend that off, and they just don't get sick. Your mortality rates are really different. I think a lot of us have got to the point where you hatch 100. Matt used to say this. I say, "Well, I hatched 200." You say, "Yeah, but how many did you raise?
How many did you grow up? Yeah.
How many did you grow up?" Well, if you hatched 100, and I got 75 or 80. Well, you think about that. that's a hell of a mortality rate. So if you hatch 100 and you've got 98 left that you haven't culled yet, you're doing something right. So I think there's a lot to that, and I think I used to sit and talk to Louis Straight all the time about Cornish because I never could hatch a Cornish. God, I had a really nice big Cornish from him, and I couldn't hatch shit. And but he told me that he thinks I burn them up. Too much protein, too quick, and they never are without it. We don't ever in the summertime. They cut that protein content down, let them mold out, and then bring them back up. And we just keep pumping them full all the time. I'm starting to believe that. Now it's hard to do because you don't want to change feed. It's a pain in the butt. But if you listen to the guys that actually made a living raising show chickens back in the heyday, you might want to heed a little bit of that. There's Kenny and Nancy. Hi, guys.
Kenny and Nancy. Yeah, and I kind of take it like this because I, like Dan, I read a lot of that old stuff, but you have to put yourself in the time frame. They didn't have access to anything else. They had to pretty much fabricate everything they needed for whatever they needed to do. So,
but it worked.
And you fast forward to now, so you got to kind of get somewhere in between there. And some of that stuff does work, but some of it I think we've progressed a little better along. And I know one of the problems I think with our birds today is they're too well taken care of. But they're even compared to the 70s when I started, these birds are getting fed a lot better feed. They're getting probably bred to a higher level. There's a whole lot of things going on there. So you just kind of got to put the time frame and relativity to what you're doing, and some of that stuff works. The sprouted oaks, I know a lot of guys that use those, all the time. Mike and Craig and several of them like that. So. Oh, looks like Sue's got some hot one. There's Jim Anderson too.
Yeah, it's been really hot out west, it appears. Dan, you were telling Matt and I a story in the green room about Lee Marsh coming up to your place for our new hell. Everybody's probably younger than us, but
yeah, anymore.
And haven't been around. I mean, and don't have the same affinity for the old Poultry World magazines and everything, and reading all that stuff and digesting that. Tell us who Lee Marsh was, and then kind of tell us about him coming up to your place. And the whole gist of the story is, if you have someone, I guess it could,
a mentor.
Now we call them mentors, but someone that comes with a different eye and looks, they may see something that you have, that you need, that you have no idea you have that.
Yeah, well, he's was Pioneer Farms, and he lived down in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and he bred the white leghorns for many years and put out a beautiful catalog. I'd gone down to visit him. He had a couple of shilling paintings on the wall of his birds, a male and a female, that were just beautiful. And he had seen my buffs somewhere, one of the shows, and he liked them. And he said he hadn't seen any like those since Madison Square Garden days. And he used to judge down there, even though he didn't have a judging license. But he said Dan Young, he was showing some birds, and Dan Young was the judge, and pulled him aside after the judging was done and told him that the third place male that he had was really special. He had really good feather quality, and he told him to make use of that bird, and it'll do wonders for you. And he did that. He kept that bird in his best mating for like 6 years or more, and bred some really good birds from him. And anyway, he had come up, I don't know, he was 6 or 8 years he did this before he got too old. And he one year he said that one of my females was better than the rest. He said she was really nice, and he said she had the tail coverts and the lesser coverts that would really help the males, put a bigger tail onto them and a better back line. And so I pair mated her with the best male I had, which wasn't that great, but it was the best one I had at the time. And so I raised a dozen or so chicks from them in a pair mating. And the chicks were nice. They were much better than average. And I took the hen and her daughters and mated it to one of the cockerels. And the other 3 or 4 pens that I had were all sired by sons of hers. And it really did help, probably 4 or 5 years progress in the tails and backs on those birds. And I was so grateful that he pointed that out and, suggested I do it. And he said, well, that kind of repays him because Dan Young told him the same type of thing, and it just goes to show how helping each other is really worthwhile.
Yes. Yeah.
For those that aren't familiar with Dan Young, he may be the greatest breeder of large fowl white leghorns there ever was. So to preface, they were learning from probably the best there was at the time and maybe to this day, because his farm was known all over
the world. So what he called that leather feather, and by that he meant the thickness, right? It was a thick feather.
Well, he didn't tell me that, but Don said he called it that. He called it just good feather quality. He said it was the feather texture, and he compared it to fine clothing, how there's more threads per inch and this and that. And he showed it to me. I thought that was, important to note that, And another Dan Young story, there was another breeder who had commercial buff leghorns. He had like 6,000 of them. And his name was Herb Knapp. And I think he was in Ohio. But anyway, he had gotten a commercial egg strain. And it was about the same time as Dan Young, and they knew each other. And Dan Young asked him if it was easier to start with show birds and breed up egg production or the other way around. And Herb said that his best culling, he did it because he had so many chicks. And he said there definitely was a correlation between chick color and adult color. And so he made big progress by picking out the best colored chicks and saving them for himself. And he did this for about 20 years. And when he was putting matings together, of course, he would select some of the ones with longer backs and longer legs and, some of the show points that they were lacking in his egg line. And he said the thing is, it's going to take you 20 years to do it either way. And I thought, well, that's true too.
And I think that's often the kickback to most people wanting to do a project anymore, is they don't understand that it takes sometimes, 10, 12, in that case, 20 years to complete it. And we kind of come from a society now that wants it in 1 or 2 matings. And when you're doing some of this work, and as well as we do with buffs, we talked about it earlier too, is there's never a comfort level. So when you think you got it, then you get a whole batch of new problems pop up, and you gotta, I guess after years of doing it, you just breed yourself out of them, and you get into almost like a rhythm with buffs that you don't want to get rid of this one because I might need that down the road, or so you end up keeping a lot more birds than what you normally would.
Well, I always found that, you're always going to get about 50% males and 50% females. And I think the males are, very important color wise. And you've got a lot of males to pick for or through before you get down to what you're going to need. And so I think that's a great tool, to improve your color just by picking better colored males. And, you got to have some numbers to do that.
I guess my tendency always has been towards the male bird, especially in the buff, line. So you definitely don't want to use a bad colored buff male bird. Now I may use one that they call hot colored because I like a little more vibrancy but I don't like them the other way. I don't like them splotchy, and I don't like them lemon. So I think you're right. If you start picking for that male, sooner or later you'll clean the females up too. They'll start getting more even, and and more consistent, I guess, in color. But I like the chick thing because now that I think about it, when Mike had the buffs down here and I hatched off a buff, I could tell which ones were going to be good colored from, when they start to feather a little bit. You just know it after a while.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tom Roebuck, there's another buff guy.
Oh yes, he's very good with buffs.
Don't tell him that his head will swell.
Oh yeah.
Try to keep him.
He's got the years of frustration when in the gray hair. What's up there is gray, maybe, to prove it.
But how do you tell us? You've had buffs a long time, and you have them in. You got Minorcas, correct? You still have Minorcas?
I had them for about 20 years, but I had the buff leghorns maybe 45.
Okay, so tell us, without getting into, because we all know that the intricacies are
many.
yeah, it never ends. But so what do you look for in that buff male and with the color of the females when you're deciding? Let's just say we got type. We'll just go with that.
Okay.
We have type. So what do you look for to attempt, which it's always an attempt, to have that good, even, rich buff color that has color to it, isn't washed out, isn't whatever the hell that barred Creole pattern that comes in some hackles and I don't even know where the hell that comes from, or that mealiness, because a lot of times there's a lot of mealiness in females, especially. What do you look for? I mean, just as a general.
Well, I think in general, and of course, a lot of people probably won't admit it, but the best buff breeders have always done a little bit of double mating. There's matings for the males and there's matings for the females. If you really want to darken or lighten a bird, you've got to take that into consideration. And I think in general, the males always have a little more color than the females. So that's the average mating to maintain color. And if you want to darken it, you've got to do like a cockerel mating where you're actually using darker birds. But every time you have to keep your extremes down to a minimum. You want to keep it as close as you can. You don't want to go too many tones one way or the other, or you get very patchy birds. Now, the patchy birds can be used, especially if they're females, back to an even colored male, and you'll get some pretty good offspring. And that's one way to take your color back to something richer, or if you're going lighter that way. But I remember reading something that E.B. Thompson wrote, and he, of course, grew up right in the town where I am. And he said, your barred rocks, you have your dark, your double mating with those. And he said that as he bred them more and more years, they became closer. But you still had to take those tendencies into consideration. So, I think that's true with the buffs. If you really want to, you don't want to continue it so far that you're doing like the brown leghorns, you don't want to make two varieties out of it. And you don't want to have double the coops, it takes to double mate than you would single mate. But, there is a little bit of that goes into it. And if you have undercolor, I think that quilt color helps reduce shafting. So that it makes sense. You got a darker quill, you're not going to have that light quill showing up on the surface. Yep. And then you have feather structure too. Some of the nicest birds I ever had, and it wasn't a huge number, but they came from these matings where I had some this edging, or I guess you call it lacing.
We used to call it shadow lacing. You'll see.
Yeah. They can just shimmer and shine. It's a feather structure thing more than anything, more than pigment. But the glossiness was just amazing on, especially males. You would only see it maybe a little in their breasts, whereas the females you would see it on their back feathers. And it did fade some as they aged. it wasn't as noticeable in hens and cockbirds as it was in cockerels and pullets. But I didn't consider that a terrible fault because I thought it was beautiful. And if you looked at it,
Yep.
and
It's pretty. Really
I've seen strains of birds that were actually dull,
Yes.
and kind of
And that's
muddy.
ugly. That's ugly, Bo.
Yes.
It looks like mud to me. Like and you can wash them and do whatever you want. That's it. There's no life, vibrancy, luster to them at all. It's
Right.
just bleh. Yeah, that's my trouble with chocolate. Sorry, chocolate.
There was a breeder and a judge, Frank Conway, who developed a strain of Orpingtons that he called Stay Buffs, and he did that by just because he had huge numbers to work with, and the birds that molted in good as cocks and hens are the ones that he bred from, and that really reduced that fading trait.
Yep.
And so I thought that was an excellent way of doing that.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing in a lace variety, right? If you have, I mean, the guys that used to really breed like silver laced or golden laced partridge, after that first molt, what those hens look like, if they were clean, well, then those are the ones they bred from, because they wouldn't breed from pullets because you never know with a pullet. I mean, look at the pullets we used to have, Matt, and as they become hens, they were the shit color wise, but man, they were gorgeous pullets. And if you didn't show them as pullets, you were screwed.
It's that's why I always try to reiterate that bird in the standards, a 2-year-old bird.
Yes.
So you've got to be real careful breeding from cockerels and pullets and whatever breed variety line you've got, because you really don't know what they're going to look like yet. And you're breeding from something that's not completely mature. So yeah, that's always a touchy thing. And it's not so much with the solid color birds, but definitely with the party color birds, you got to really watch breeding from young ones. And with lots of years with partridge, very rarely, he'll very rarely ever see me I might use a cockerel if he matures real good and colors up well, but a pullet's got to go till it's a hen, because I've had to be barred. They look barred until they mold into their hen plumage, and then they come penciled. So it's a little touchier color to breed from young birds.
I think on the leghorns, because they're the longest tailed buff breed out there, that you have to be really careful in the tail section. And if you get that right, and especially in a cockbird, you've got a really sound buff. And I think leghorns in general have a tighter feather and a little less undercolor, and the females even less. You can't really compare them to a rock or an Orpington's color. I think
the depth of color is not quite that.
And quill color is certainly very good, as well. I think that's an extension of undercolor, but if you've got that helps your breeding.
Dan, do you think some of the problem on the leghorn side over the years has been that continual going back to whites?
Yes, I think that white, of course, white leghorns are genetically a black fowl. And so I think you get the green legs quite often from them. And you get that blue in the beak and around the eyelid. And I think that's just that melanin pigment that's coming from the white leghorn. And you can also get that, I think, that dark color probably from duckwings as well, because they have some extra pigment in there. And I don't know if that's the green leg there's like 2 layers, skin and the outer skin and the inner skin. And I think they're both inherited a little differently, but I think they're sex linked.
Yep.
And a matter of fact, I just had an email from Jeff Shanks.
Shank, yeah.
And he was asking about the green leg. And I told him, well, if a female, if you mate her with green legs, you mate her to a yellow-legged male, half of her chicks will be green-legged and half will be yellow-legged. Now, her yellow-legged daughters you can use, and they'll breed true. But the males, a lot of times, they'll be yellow-legged, but they're carrying the green leg hidden.
Yep.
And you don't want to keep two green-legged males because you're going to get a male and a female that have green legs, or you get nothing but green legs.
Right.
And so, but you can make use of if you got a really good female that has green legs, it's good to know that there's sex linkage there.
Yep.
And they're usually really a typey thing too.
Mm.
That's the weird part. But it happens in white cochins because there's so much black is put in. But I remember one time, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was ours, but I think Fred had it, Clay Dove. And we washed this thing up, and I mean, she was spectacular. And I looked at her, and I said, she has green legs.
Good boy, did she? They were like,
I mean, but she was a and that was the best type bird in the whole barn. But I mean, it's just, that stuff happens. It happens in Cornish a lot, in white Cornish, because they put dark in,
mm-hmm.
and then, and sometimes it can be a bitch to get it out. And I think the reason it is because they use the males from that
mm-hmm.
cross and not just go with the yellow-legged females to put back.
Mm-hmm.
That I never thought about that, but I think that's probably right. I think that's probably right.
There seems to be a big popularity right now in buff rock bantams. We've got 6 or 7 people raising those, so hopefully they can get them going again. Because
they're coming back. I
know Jim's got them. So does Tony Davis.
Tony's got them. Will's got them.
Kim Munden has got them.
Jim the other Anderson. Doggone. Used to be the APA. Dave and Jim are they're working together on them, and they showed some in January, and I'm telling you, they're coming. They're coming. They're really pretty. Truthfully, and I've never seen a handful that are worth a shit. I mean, at the shows before, Max would have one every now and then, and a few, but man, oh man, I've seen more in the past year.
Yep.
That are actually rocks. Really nice. I got it right, Jim. It's Dave. Thanks.
And John Patterson's working on the buff bantams,
Mm-hmm.
buff leghorn bantams and buff Wyandotte bantams. So I know they've made. So I've been following that since they started. So I know with the Wyandottes, he's made some really good progress this year. I haven't seen the leghorns yet. I know he had quite a few out, but I haven't seen them. So
is it Doc's working with them too, isn't he?
Yeah, he was, and I don't know if he still is.
I think Jonathan got him.
Oh, did I?
I was chatting with Jonathan, and I was telling him that one thing that he should try to do, since he's got those matings yet, is to mate the F1 to the F1 and raise a lot of them. I mean, theoretically, you should get 25% should be pretty much buff, and 50% should look like the parents, and then 25% would take after the whites. But the reason for doing that is because if you back cross to the buff, the pure buffs, of course, you're going to improve the color a lot, but you're going to lose that type in those awful wings that are hanging down and those things that you want to get away from. Whereas if you keep the F2, breed the F2 as well, hopefully you get some with buff and the type genes. Yep. Whereas if you go back to the pure buffs, you're going to dilute that and probably end up with something similar to what you started with.
You made a great point, and I'll go back to one thing you said. You mentioned E.B. Thompson, so I have a lot of his old catalogs and read a lot of stuff that he wrote. And he had one comment that I always loved, and I know Kurt Keene loved this. It was in his catalog. He said, if they would do better, I would keep them in the parlor. And I think that's how he made his living, was selling those barred rock hatching eggs and chicks, and and he would put out these gorgeous mating lists where you could buy eggs from this mating, and they'd be illustrated by Sewell, and it was just a fantastic little marketing give. But that's one thing. And then this year I did exactly what you're talking about, and I was thinking of doing what you just said. So I took barred coach and bantams. I'd got some, and I had them years ago, and they're not as good as what they were probably back then, but I crossed them. Mike had a white with a little black leakage in the hackle, and a black with white leakage in the hackle. So I used both those birds. and crossed them to a barred male and a barred hen and got a bunch of chicks. Theoretically, I should have got all barred females and weird colored males, but I actually got two really good, look like double barred males out of this cross. So that tells me that the whites and the blacks are both masking, probably barred somewhere for them to come that good a color. But I'm going to do exactly what you said. I'm putting those F1s back together because not only do they have good color, but they have good coach and type. And the first thing you would do normally in a color mating is go back to the barred to reinforce that color. But then, like you say, I'm going to go backwards in type almost to where I started, just maybe a little bit of an improvement. Where I think if I use these two F1s, they're both good type and they're decent. They're not perfect color, but they're decent colored. I'll get enough assortment out of that. That's going to be good enough type to then move on. So that's a great comment. And everybody should take notes.
The thing I wonder about the bards, the coaches is probably 99% of the time, the best colored barred coaching is always a male bird, and the females are muddy anyway.
Double mating.
Double mating, exactly. That's why we've never really done that with them.
No.
Yeah, it's in there. The tendencies are there.
And the tendencies are just like barred rocks too, because if you mate them together long enough, the feather gets thinner, it gets stringier, you start losing the cushion, and
it gets longer too. That
right. And over the years, A.S. Gibbons. I don't know if you remember A.S. Gibbons or not, but he was the originator of the barred coach in Bantam, and he was a friend of mine in the 70s, and then I think early 80s he passed on, but he had worked on them for years, and that was always everybody's tendency to either go back to a barred rock or go back to a black coach, and then you're starting all over again. And we've never got out of that mode in 40 years. We're still trying to do the same thing. So this year I wanted to do something different, and so far with what I got out there, I'm happy with, and it looks like it worked. And for once, I can say the offspring are better than the parents, so that's always a good thing, and why I'm thinking about using the F1s together. And I think you just reinforced my thought.
I think you have to keep some numbers with those too,
yes.
Just to give it a chance to work.
Yep.
You're going to have a lot of calls,
and the good thing is the original birds, there's not much there I want to go back to, so it's not going to be hard to raise from what I got here, because I think I'm starting a whole lot farther down the road this year than what I did last year. So those are good projects. So I can actually foresee a good result, as opposed to sometimes when I do. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I decided to make buff Chanticleers and partridge Chanticleers by crossing out the whites, because what I seen had no type. They were just a little short back buff chicken with a pea comb. And I did it with the best white female that I had over my best buff male and my best partridge male. The partridge cross worked great. Within about 2 generations, I'm up and running. That buff thing was a nightmare. And I never got a buff chick. And no. I raised a bunch of them. I raised about 75. There was not a single buff chick in that buff male to white female cross. I had Colombian. I had kind of a buff Delaware looking thing. I had Creoles. I had salmons. I had pencils. I had everything come out of that but buff. So
whenever you do crossings of any kind, you don't know what's hidden in the backgrounds of those birds. And black and buff can really carry a lot of them. And then you got to clean them up.
Right.
And you got to have a point where you can clean from. And with that one, I thought, man, I don't even know what to use.
He cleaned all right. They all went. He cleaned it right down to the base.
I had 2 of the gorgeous typed Creole.
Yeah, they were pretty. And they were
also
beautiful.
What I got out of that buff mating, which was amazing, is I got solid black females. I think I had 8 or 9. They were solid black, beetle green sheen, yellow legs. I could have. I don't know what male I would ever use to keep them going, because I never got a black male, but I did scrap those. But I had some really nice black Chanticleers that come out of a white buff mating.
Skittles. Let's read that to Dan, because this is someone that actually is talking leghorns here.
Okay. Any advice on finding and breeding red leghorns or maybe some black-tailed ragged leghorns like your old ones, Mr. Renor?
Okay. Yeah, I had a few that I was fussing with. And actually, I had a customer that bought a couple of good buff females, and they were going to, they had gotten a Murray McMurray black-tailed red, and it had just terrible feather quality, real frayed, frizzled tail, and, just awful tail. And he wanted to make an all red leghorn. So anyway, he crossed that male that he had from Murray McMurray's onto the buff females I had, and the next generation they had pretty good feather quality, but the color wherever was black was white, and the buff was much darker. And he said, "Well, what do I do? This is not what I wanted." And I said, "Well, breed the F1 together and see what you get." And of course he got sidetracked, but he sent me 24 eggs, hatching eggs, and I raised, I think, 6 or 7 hatched. And I had 2 males. One had a side sprig, so I didn't keep him, but the other one was solid red. He had no black in his tail whatsoever. And so I said, "Well, what do I do with it?" So I ended up mating it back to my buffs, because I figured it already had buff into them anyway. And they were very patchy, but they had quill color and undercolor, unbelievable. And I took one more generation of buff back to those, and they were fine. I really liked them. They were good. And
they were a solid red and not a black.
They're solid red. And then I was also, I think somebody wanted some booklets. I think it was Carl Baker from Ohio.
Yeah.
And he was working with the black-tailed reds, and he sent me like a dozen eggs, and I hatched, I don't know, 5 or 6 chicks. And he said he had made them from a Rhode Island red.
Yep, I remember. He actually he won Best Mediterranean years ago at Lucasville with a black-tailed red leghorn. Yeah, and beat some rather prominent white breeders of the time. And I seen that, but it was a nice type bird. And I think that was a F1 from the red leghorn cross too. It was the first year.
I kept them, he said they were brother-sister matings for many years. And of course, that's what I was doing with them for a generation or two. And I decided I had gotten a dark buff male that came out of my buff matings and had really good type. And I thought that his birds needed a little more tail. And you could definitely see the Rhode Island red in them. They were a little bit stocky, short-legged, small white earlobes. And so anyway, I crossed them with a dark buff that I had. And it really improved the type considerably. Longer tails, they just look more stylish. But the color was awful quite a bit. They almost looked two-toned. And so I
was it kind of New Hampshire-y?
Yes, yeah. That's what they reminded me of. Well, I bred some of them brother and sister together that had the buff leghorn in both sides. And I did get some darker ones, and they were nice. And I showed them for a couple years and didn't have any competition or anything with them, but they were a fun project.
They weren't the next rage. I
right.
say this, so I'm working on one too, and the birds I got to start with were this is on the red Cochin side, and red Cochins actually had that true breeding red for a lot of years, and there was a lot of them around here, and then they kind of just went away. So I had it in my head last year I was going to start that project, so I got some black-tailed red eggs and hatched them out, but I'm just not real sure about the genetic makeup of the seed stock I have. I'm almost thinking from the down color and the way they look that they're wheaten based. That's what they look like to me. Although when they mature, they get red feathers with the not real good hackle color, but they got some black in the tail. But I was thinking about to make them back to solid reds, I'm going to have to use buff. And you kind of just reinforce that thinking pattern that I'm going to need to get probably a really good buff male and see what happens there.
I found that in in most of my matings over the years, if you really want to improve the color, try to have a solid colored tail on one mating or the other, one half of the mating.
Okay.
Because if you have it on both sides, you got to just reduce it, and it's very slow, whether it be white or pepper. And yeah, so if you have, like, your male's got a clear tail and your female's got a little white, that's a good mating. And you'll probably get some that won't have it.
Okay.
And if they do have some white, it'll be less than what you started with. And the same with pepper.
I'm not seeing any on the seed stock. I'm not seeing any white in them, but there's something else. And until they mold out the last time, you really can't even tell they're red. They kind of look like a muddled up chocolate color pretty much. And then when they come in with those last feathers, they start getting red, like a Rhode Island red color. But up until then, I told him, I said, some of them look partridge, some of them look buff, some of them look, I don't know what they look like. So I'm just curious to see what they finish out. And then I may actually try that, just get a buff male, get one of those. And because we've got some pretty decent colored buff males, and throw them on there.
I remember talking with Bert Gowdy. Of course, his father had big buffs, and he kind of grew up with the buffs. But anyway, he was telling me that Marcus Davidson always sold a rather light colored buff, and customers would breed it a couple of years, and the white would come right in, because they didn't know how to breed color, for one thing, and his were light to start with. So he was kind of building in customers by selling that shade, but he himself knew that he needed a little more color. I remember reading in the Stringman scrapbook that somebody had gone to his place and pointed out a buff, and he said they had said, well, that's the color, and Marcus said, a little more color preferably.
It's funny you say. You got to go there once in the 70s with Clay Dove. We went over there to pick up some birds, and the only reason I remember it so clearly was it seemed like back then to get to Bath, New York, or Bath, Pennsylvania, it took forever, because there wasn't like highways and turnpikes like we got now. But we got there, and he was shipping 2 buff coaching birds out to Art Manley in California for I think it was the 73 when Mike, the World Coaching Family, was out there.
Yeah, Art won it.
Art won it with the bird he just got from Marcus. Marcus shipped them in a bushel basket and put one of them old-fashioned wood lids on top of it, wrapped it down, and it had the address and everything on top, and went on the train out to him. But that bird took that whole basket up. It was probably one of the best buff females I think I'd ever seen at the time. But when you say that, he had all the breeds running around there, the Menorcas, everything was just running everywhere through there. And I was always amazed at the color. I mean, the consistency of color across all those breeds. So he definitely was with Mr. Buff, they call him to this day, but I did get to see some of them.
There's a guy by the name of Ed Schmidt that had the buff Menorcas, and he really had really good ones and perfected them. And I had gone through the phone book one time and seen that name in there. And I said, well, I'm going to call it just to see, and it turned out to be his son. And he told me that his father had died in the late 50s, I guess. And, but he had, he sold chicks, he'd advertised and sold the buff Menorca chicks by the 25, 50, 100. And he had, I did a half a dozen flocks that, I guess you call them farmed out.
Yeah.
Flocks, and that's where these chicks were coming from. But he himself, his father had like 20 pens at home, and he would call the females from these hatchery flocks. And if there was a good one, he'd bring it back home with his own matings, and they were all his blood anyway. But anyway, he provided the cockbirds for these other farms. All the cockbirds came from his yards. So I thought that was, a good way of doing it. He kind of controlled the quality because he was headquarters.
Right.
And a lot of the bigger hatcheries do that. I know Cackle has all their, most of their birds farmed out like that. And they've kind of invested over the years in some show stock, and they'll advertise and sell some pretty decent birds, but they're a lot of them are Amish growers, but they're farmed out to individuals who then supply them eggs, and then the hatchery goes in and calls and, takes what they want or replenishes what they think they need for the next year. But they have done some. I know they come to Craig Schaefer's and bought one year 50 Barred Rock hens, pullets hens. I know because Mike and I run them down, and a couple others, and we got all these hens. But they've been good about investing. But that's how they kind of manage their flocks that way. Is they can? I think they can do a lot more. They don't.
It's like the Polish. They had a Henning.
Joel Henning's Polish.
Joel, and they were fantastic, and they sell all that shit really quick. But
white Polish. I'd go to fairs and I'd be making white Polish champion and reserve large fowl. Where did you get these white Polish? Well, they all said Cackle Hatchery. Well, then I talked to Joel. Now I know why, because I think they got it. They got a lot of his white crested blacks, his blues, and his whites. I think some of it went to Superior Farms as well, and that kind of went down the rat hole. But they still have pretty nice white Polish. I run into them at the fairs quite a bit.
Yeah, they sure do. Well, Dan, how many? So, what are you raising now besides the big buffs?
I've gotten some Anconas. I'm starting with them, fussing with them because I hadn't seen any good ones in a long time. And I said, well, I'll fuss with those. I know they got the progressive white that you've got to watch, and that's going to be. You can't cull them young either. You've got to really grow them out. But I just hadn't seen any good ones, and I had some from Phil Roof way back, and never did much with them. But and then I had many years ago, I went to Art Schallenberg's, and he was a judge in Westernville, New York.
Yep.
He had some. I went there because he had some buffs that had come from Pete Crisell. And so I got a few of those, but he had some black Minorcas there, and I rather thought they were nice. And so I got a couple of, several black Minorcas, and I fussed with them. I always kept a trio or two of those around. Never, raised very many, but I kept them going for years, and they were pretty good quality. And so I had to move, so that's why this guy Chris lives in Pleasant Valley. He has them, and I help him call, and it's been 7-8 years now, and they're pretty decent birds. We got an odd bird from Richard Schock, but it's been I don't think anybody else has anything that went back to Art Schallenberg stuff.
No,
so they're kind of a separate strain, I would say, at this point.
Yeah.
But they've been doing very well. Although it's
a single comb or rose comb Anconas?
Single comb.
I've seen pictures in the Poultry Press, so they look very nice.
They've won pretty good too.
I had them for 3 or 4 years, and that's anything out on the grass looks good.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I'd turn those hens out. For some reason, to me, it seemed it took them forever to grow the females. I mean,
they're still growing.
But hens and cockbirds, and I'd turn them out, and there is nothing prettier. That they are absolutely gorgeous, and it always got me. I don't know about your strain, but the funniest thing is they would follow me, and man, they'd be all over your feet, and everything. And when I reached down to pick them up, they're really fast. They were good buy, but they like you. It's like, I don't know how much I like you, but I tell you, they're absolutely. I'm not a model person, but that's modeling, and they are absolutely gorgeous. And I'm glad you get single combs. I know where some really good rose comb ones are, and single combs, but just the single comb. Something about a single comb bird to me, the style. That comb sets off the style of a Mediterranean bird to me.
And I always found that whenever I had any, there was always some fertility problems with them.
Yes.
At least to a degree. They didn't hatch as well. A lot of times you had those telescoping points, leaders or whatever. And, it's just, the single combs just look better to me anyway.
Me too.
And
I agree.
with the Anconas, there's some beautifully marked ones over in Australia and Belgium and several of those countries. I mean, it looked like they were painted. They were so nice.
Yeah. Well, they breed for color more. I mean, their type is
not what we like.
Oh God, the type on their leggers, it's like, that coat weighs more than the rest of the leggers put together. I mean, to me, it's like, ugh. But as far as color, they've got color, and they can make it looks like about any color. Some of the color combinations come up with are spectacular.
It's funny. There's a guy that I correspond with, Keith Ashley in England. And he says, "Oh, your American birds are all tail and no head." And I told him, "His are all head and no tail."
Yeah,
it's kind of the antithesis of the extreme.
Yes, exactly.
Yep, they got them little short tails on them.
Yeah, whip tails.
Yeah, and they got these bodies. I mean, they're not long, and I mean,
somewhere over here when we got that memo about balance, they didn't get it.
No,
the birds aren't balanced at all.
No, but the color wise is great, and it seems like from what I've seen, I don't know if our gentleman from Sydney's on here, but we actually have quite a few followers in Australia, and but their birds are basically the same way as the British birds, although they do have some wonderful Wyandottes and barred rocks and those things.
Breeds, yep.
American breeds, they have some beautiful birds. Yeah, they do still have light and dark bards. Yeah, they never combined them. We combined them, so it made it easier, so it makes it harder.
Yeah.
So you're right, Katrina. And Katrina, your bards in the pictures that you put out, they look pretty spicy too. They look very nice. You're to be congratulated. It's not an easy breed. It's a beautiful breed, but it's one of the most frustrating things I've ever bred. Is barred and bantams or large fall, and rocks. That's all I've ever bred it in. But when they're done right, they're right. Hell, you can say that about any chicken. If it's right, then it's really pretty, and if it's not right, yeah, no. Run of the mill. So what's next, Dan? What do you still writing? What are we doing?
Well, it started out as I would just save articles, that I'd find here and there and put them in a folder. Well, it got to be the folders were kind of big, and there was some of them were clippings from Poultry Press that weren't holding up very good. So I sat down one winter and typed them all up. And I did that on one was just buffs, one was just matings, mating methods, which ended up being the art of breeding. And then, of course, I had some just Leghorns and Minorcas, So those were the start of my booklets. And when I put them out in the 80s as books, paperback books. Well, as the years went by, I got more pages, and it got too thick to print. And so, it had a couple of thousand pages on some of them. And then it was Fred Jeffries who told me, don't try to rewrite all those articles. Keep the artists, the original authors, because you're going to lose a lot in the translations if you try to do anything else. So that's why I've written some of the articles, but other ones are, just as they came from different sources.
Got to see his books in there. The Buff book's fantastic. I think I shared it with Mike even.
That's great.
Because I mean, you don't believe this. So there's $1 million worth of information in the booklets that he's presented. And like you said, I even tried for the ABA side to get somewhere where we could publish them digitally or whatever. And it's just technology is not quite there yet to make it feasible, I guess, is the market's so small. And I think is the issue, but the information is priceless. And I think
it saves me from going through all the old old stuff. I mean, I say, I've read that before, but here it is. Oh, and here's the next one. Now it's invaluable.
It flows together real well until you put a lot of time and effort into those.
The worst part I find with them is, as I've had different computers, they've had different word processors. And so when you go to put them together, the pages don't line up quite right, as far as the numbers go. And then, I didn't want to change all those, like the Buff ones alone, there's 700 and some articles on Buff. And that's a lot of articles and a lot of pages. And then I added pictures too, because the first ones that had no pictures is just articles. And so they ended up being 2,000 or 3,000 pages.
That's really good stuff.
But the indexes aren't quite right. It may be off 5 or 6 pages because, and that just got to be too difficult to try to correct.
I found that out with you talked about how Jeffries wrote, and that's pretty much how he wrote. He wrote in kind of a quotation type format. And he always cited all of his information and always had the index. So you could always go back, and Bantam chickens is my example. So a couple of years ago, I worked on that. That was the problem. We updated some articles, added some new stuff. And then we went to do that index. And I'm thinking, I don't know that I'm going to live long enough to do the index. So we haven't got the index part of it done. And I even threatened to publish it without the index because I don't know that there's got to be some software somewhere that will do that. But we haven't found it.
Yeah, that indexing. Hell, we had that with we had to go through that with the last ABA standard.
Anytime you add pages.
Oh my gosh. And Kim got it done. So
Kim uses a software called InDesign. And if your book is set up in InDesign, I think when you change a page, it actually updates the index. That's fantastic, but it's not an easy. I tried to use it, and that's not my thing. I think they teach college courses on InDesign, and it's pretty much what all the publishers use nowadays, whether they're doing digital or hard copies.
So thank God for Kim London.
That's thank God for Kim.
Yeah, everything just looks spectacular, and while that really matters, I mean, the information is the same. But I know that when I used to get Fred's books, back when we were young, and they come out spiral bound and everything, and I'm thinking, geez, half the pages are upside down and I have to flip shit around and stuff like that. But I mean, the information was there.
Yeah, that's there.
So that's the thing. And like we were talking earlier, it's like we don't want to work for anything. It's like, where'd this go?
And so the amazing thing is in Fred's day, that was all hand typed by his secretary.
I know it.
And then edited and whatever. And it just the logistics of the last 30 years in computers has made that so much easier because Guy couldn't imagine what it took to do that, do those books when he did them, because that would have been horrible to do on a typewriter.
Absolutely.
Thinking about, Art Schilling, he never wanted to do color plates in the standards because, the way printing was not exactly true printing. It wouldn't, 2 copies wouldn't exactly look the same, and he also said the same thing about photography, back in the 50s towards the end of his career. Color photography still wasn't very good. I mean, you had a lot of variation into it. And so that's why he always thought, people should have oil painting done, not only because he was making money, because he thought that was the only way to get the true color.
Yep.
And, I remember Herb Hall had those famous 4 at his place, and those are some of the few Schilling pictures I've actually seen, paintings. But the Buff one did not look that one did not look as good in that picture when they did them in the 50s. So he, when I looked at it, I said, boy, this really looks great in person. And he actually photographed it for me. And I put it on one of the book covers, the Buff booklets. I think it was the part 2 or Buff Coloration Part 2. And you can definitely see the difference between, those pictures. One was actually very much nicer. The other one's too red.
Yeah.
Too hot. That one was a beautiful picture of as far as the Buff goes. And another one that I liked was the one Poultry Tribune had on the Buff Orpington.
Yes.
That was a really nice buff picture. But some of those you see they're too blue, or you have to get a good print to get a good.
Even if you go back to when
right.
they used the Jackie pictures in the standard, I can remember those guys that were editing that at the time. That was some of the printer troubles with them.
Right.
The first ones were printed overseas or something, that they didn't come out exactly the same color as what they proofed. So that's
there was even the buff Minorca picture that Stamer did. Those birds were supposedly, I had corresponded quite a bit with C.M. Lewis out in Oregon, and he'd bred the Minorcas for 50 years, I guess. And he said those were his birds. That Stamer actually went to a show and saw those birds, and he just had to have him do the painting of them. And he had the painting for a long time. I guess he lost it in a flood or something. And then somebody told me that they actually saw that at that display they had in, what was it, Rockwell, Illinois?
Oh, it's so
it may have been a print that they gave him and not the original, but
some of those were commissioned for the old before it was Watt Publishing. I think they owned the Reliable Poultry Journal, so they commissioned a picture every year or every issue for the fold out, and then every year they commissioned one for their office, and that's where, when they had them on display in '98, that's where we went up there and got them and brought them back. But even those, when you look at those, and you talked about the color on the buffs, and some of the buffs that were at Columbus that year, they weren't as good as probably what you see some of the newer. Whether they've been touched or what. But those, I mean, the ones that Watt had the original flaws and all. Some of them were cracking a little bit, and God, they're 100 years old. But
or over.
I know we tried even with software to colorize the old black and white pictures of shillings, and it's not there yet either now. Maybe with AI coming on and you tell it to do it. But the problem with it is, and we found it with doing some standard revisions, is to get 5 breeders to agree on the color of, let's take Blue Wheaton, for example. That was like a nightmare. Poor Kim, she painted that picture, I don't know how many times. And then I had them send me feathers and, to get it right, because again, that's a little tougher color to interpret. In
it's just like color. Trying to tell a blind person color, it's just very difficult to do it in words.
Yep, exactly. Well, it's like, anything that's wrote, what's medium length to you,
right?
What's broad and what's not broad. So it's that, that room for interpretation. And that's what everybody has to remember when they've got their birds with what they see. And please study a standard of your birds. But that judge's idea of a medium shank might be, well, hey, you know what? That's an awful tall. No, it's medium. Well, it's medium to you,
right?
But it might not be medium to the next guy. So it's all give and take, man. You just gotta. But as long as you're happy with it, and you can see that written word and how you interpret it, and that's where you are, just keep showing. Just keep going. So I think that's very important. Well, I'll tell you what, this has been really good. I'm glad you were on here. I'm glad we could we got this all worked out when between you and Don and a couple others you've had on here. If people don't learn anything about Leghorns, or you and Tom and Buff Color, if they don't learn anything about Buff, I don't know if there's much damn help out there. So
we didn't say, but both Mike and I was in the Ancona business for a while. He was with the big ones, and those come from Tim Bowles, which were old Wilbur Stauffer string birds. Tim was in the 70s, the one up there when Wilbur come in and bought what he had left of, and they were the old Shepherd line Anconas, which was big Ohio guy. And that's all he had, and he had big catalogs in the day. And Mike played with them a little bit, and I had some Bantams that were Doug Akers, which I guess were old Ernie Derb line Ancona Bantams. Well, they definitely needed some work, so I got the bright idea that Mike had a quasi smaller Ancona male up there, and I put him on Bantams. And within about 2 or 3 generations, I had some pretty nice Bantams. The problem was that they did not get the temperament the Bantams had. They had the large fowl temperament, which was totally insane.
Absolutely nuts.
Oh my God, you couldn't get them even in the show cage. They just, I've had Leghorns and I've had browns and dark browns and whites, and I was able to tame them down to where they got some semblance of being able to put them in a show cage. Never one of those Anconas. They were just wild from the
word go. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know, before we leave, something I wanted to touch on is I've noticed, and when I was looking through your books that Matt had, I've always had this thing for white-faced black Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why a coaching guy has always had this thing for white-faced black Spanish, but especially a male bird that's right. You don't see many of them. You see a lot more females and a lot better ones, but that's a breed that has really come back in the past year or two. I mean, there are a lot of white-faced black Spanish large fowl and bantam shown. I can't say a lot. There's a hell of a lot more. We went years and never saw one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else. Have you ever messed with Spanish or?
No, but I have, a lot of times they've sold some black Minorcas to Spanish guys that wanted to increase their size, which a lot of times they did need more size.
Yes.
And, I think it was Eric Nelson who told me that he had crossed the Spanish with the Minorcas, and it took a couple of years, but he was able to do it, and it was well worth it because he was able to keep some size, and you can add some weight in the face, and it was a good outcross.
That's been done a lot, and I think what happens with the regular ones is they lose the length. They just lose that length of back, and
they shorten up quick.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, but that's another Mediterranean that seems to be on the rise, and unfortunately, the one that's on the downfall as far as numbers it shows are Minorcas. We very rarely see any that are really a Minorca. I don't know how to say that kindly because I can't.
Because we come up around the Mao brothers and Carl Teach.
Oh yeah, they had really good ones.
Radamakers, when they put them in there, they filled up
nice.
Richard's bird.
Had good ones,
he had massive. I mean,
right.
He'd show 25 of them, and I remember judging. I'm thinking, "Holy shit! I got to run these things down." I mean,
I remember.
Crazy, they were huge.
What was it? Paul Gilroy stopped up one day, and I said, and he was admiring a black Minorca male I had, and I said, "Well, here, I'll grab him. You can handle him." And the male weighed at least 11 pounds, and it was like having a turkey. And he was having trouble holding onto him and looking at him, but he was some impressed with him, And if they're big and they've got big shanks, you got a Minorca.
Yep. I think that's. We kind of look at them and think, man, what happened to those things? Because we've seen the old black, not so much the colors, a few whites back in the day, but most of them were blacks. And even the old Columbus shows in the 70s, there might be 100 Minorcas back there. It wasn't uncommon.
No, and that they all had. You talked about the shanks. They all had legs on. They didn't stand. That male birds didn't stand like this. You could actually get your hand went between their legs.
Oh yeah.
You
had to have your spread hand too.
Yes, you did.
You had to be ready to receive it when it come your way.
Yeah, because it was when you got it, you had it, buddy, and don't drop it.
Right.
Yeah, that's another one. They're beautiful. Well, the Mediterraneans are all beautiful. It's the style.
Yes, they're very flowing. I mean, there's people that don't like them because they're not pets. They're a little on the flighty side, but it's not so bad when you're taking care of them because they get used to you and they're fairly calm. But you got to cage train them. If they're going to be in shows, otherwise they just jump up into the cage and
they beat themselves to death.
Right,
I mean, they screw their feathers up, their combs up. I mean. Because once they get started, it's like a lot of different breeds of things. once you get them hot,
Mhm.
they're hot. It takes a long time to calm them down, and they don't show right.
So
No,
many
they're
of the
supposed to.
Leghorns don't have the nice level carried wing held tight, and they don't have the nice back line, the concave
Yes.
back line, and they don't have enough length of leg under. Without those things, they're not very stylish.
No.
And another one that I was very impressed with some of Bayer's white Leghorn Bantams
Oh,
because
yeah.
they've got the right length of wing onto them. They're not hanging down.
Yep.
They're very nicely balanced.
And I always love it. I always know when I'm judging George's birds,
Oh
and
yeah,
whether they're
just,
light browns or whites.
right.
They
Yep.
fit in a Bantam cage, and they show in a Bantam cage.
Yep.
You ain't got to do nothing till we had a couple at Bath a few years ago, and Mike and I judged up there. I said, "Come over here." I said it was a trio. George is always good for these East Coast, and they know how to show trios back there. But I said the best 3 birds in this layered class are in this trio, and I only picked 2. That was the problem. So I think the cockerel was the best of breed and single comb in the pullet was reserved in that trio.
Yeah,
So,
the other pullet looked exactly like her too. That
Yeah,
was the bitch.
Yeah, he
they
shows
were-
the
they
trio,
matched.
they match, and so
Hell, their
George is
combs
tough.
even lopped the same way.
Yeah, he
I mean-
won't even show them if their combs don't lop the same
Right.
way. So you looked at them, it was just down to the.
Yeah.
You're right. George is one of the only ones. I mean, there's a lot of pictures that look really good, but to see in person, his white Leghorn Bantams
They're
look
beautiful.
like a large fowl white
Well,
Leghorn.
yes, absolutely. Miniature large fowl.
and they're calm.
Yes.
I mean, they are one of the neatest of all the Leghorns. I mean, when you look at them, and if you see those, and you think, well, I'll go somewhere else and buy them, and you do,
yes.
Yeah.
then you're thinking, what is this crazy damn thing? But
Well,
I
Dan
say
and-
that, but
Dan
Don
and
Nelson's
George
were so
actually come
taken
from
too.
the hotbed of Leghorns
Yes.
in New York, upstate
Mhm.
New York, and all through New York. That's where they all were. You know, all the old time breeders and
Oh, Schilling started them,
Yep.
right in
Shelley
Rochester, New
started
York.
them, and George has had them for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Well, you had Ed Ritz up there. You
Yeah,
had,
yeah, absolutely.
you
yeah.
had
Jerry
Oh,
Yao.
geez.
Yeah.
Ken
Jerry
Mead
Yao
the
was
captain,
up
yeah.
there, and yeah, that was Leghorns, man. That was Leghorns.
I've seen some down at the Delmarva show. Tim Ballinger
Mm-hmm.
had, and it was as tame, and she was a female. I fell in love with her. She was as tame as a kitten, beautiful type, and you don't see that too often. He says he's been breeding them for temperament for many years. So, and I think Jeff Shanks has probably
Yeah,
some buyers, but they're pretty good too.
Jeff's largefowl are very docile as far as that goes, and getting to work with them and getting on the show is not a problem. And
Oh, his rose comb band.
yeah, I had the rose comb bantams, and they weren't nutty as they were nuttier than most, but not like your typical Leghorns. So, and he's done a good job getting the rose comb bantams. I mean, he's winning best of breed with those. So,
Yep, it's all, but they're a very stylish bird when they're right, and when they're wrong, they're a
Right.
white chicken.
Well, you can get them too tame and they just sit there in the cage
Yeah.
too, so it's a hard,
exactly.
or they get tired and they just want to lay in a corner.
Rick Poor had them one time, and I suppose they were Ritz's. I don't know whose they were, puppies. And he had about 2 years, and he had this female. They were absolutely gorgeous. I'm telling you, you could do anything, and they were like bomb-proof. And he would do that to his Polish too. He had some Polish females who were outstanding. I mean, even a golden lace female that was just gorgeous. Hell, they just go to sleep. They didn't give a shit what you did to them. I thought, well, you kind of got to find that. Yeah, you got to find that mid-range, where they'll actually show, because a Leghorn has to show.
Yes.
They don't do anything laying down. They're not a coaching. They just can't sit there, or a Cornish and stand in one spot. They have to show. You've got to see all that stuff. So, yeah. This has been good, guys.
Yeah.
Really good. Are
Anybody
there
got
any
any questions
out
out there? Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
We're an hour and a half into it. Has anybody got anything, or y'all just you taking notes? What are you doing?
Yeah, Katrina's there, so that's my problem. I'll get to looking through these old books, and then I ended up it's all day long. I'm getting it.
Yes,
Or
it's
somebody
easy
will,
to do.
I've got poultry presses back to the 30s, and somebody will want something from a certain time. And then I said, I hate to even tell you I'll do it because once I start digging into them, then I got to look at all of them. And they're very interesting.
When do you hang inbred chickens? I don't understand the question. You understand that, Matt?
When you hang inbred chickens into your range area.
I often thought the poultry press should have had their back issues on microfilm or digitalized.
They did. S. Robert Powell.
Some of them,
but
yes.
then it wasn't all of them. But then
Right.
I think, didn't he give them to Cornell?
I think he had, one set went to Cornell, the originals, and then I think the other ones went to Beltsville, the microfilmed ones.
Okay.
But to try to get them out or anything, you can't. I mean, you got to go down to their place and have them bring them to you and all that to see them, you know?
Oh, it's just like the books in the Vatican. You
Yeah,
got to have
I
a special request.
Yeah. But, you know, after the poultry magazines all went out of business, you know, after the Depression, the poultry press is about the only one that carried the shilling pictures and stuff.
Yep.
And those newsprints don't last forever, so they should have been, you know, preserved somehow.
It's the problem I have with mine is the more I go through them, the worse they get.
Yes.
And that paper, I would say when Bill got it, at least when they got really big there for a while, it was on a little better paper and it held up better.
Yes.
But some of them old ones from even before Bob Delancey's, when I pick them up, they just go to pieces. So they don't hold up well. Number one, and it's a for lack of a better term, the paper size is a bastard size to scan, do anything with.
Right.
So you usually end up having to piece it. And they're just it's hard to do. And it would be a big project, I think. I think nowadays with the way scanners are, if you had all the originals, you might be able to get them a place that would do them. Because I know we did that with the APA yearbooks and some of the old standards. I would send them off to, and he's gone now. He passed away. He was the Dominic guy.
It's funny.
Mark
Fields. Yeah. And I had sent a bunch because I had a bunch of the 40 APA yearbooks, which are really hard to come by because it was the war years and they didn't make very many of them. And I had sent them off and they did get them scanned. Now, when Mark died, I think that project, they was trying to get all the old standards and all the old yearbooks up online. And I think it kind of fell by the wayside.
Hannah LeBlanc wants to know, Mr. Honor, is part 2 of your Buff book available to read anywhere?
Only those CDs that I put out. I know that it was the Dutch magazine. They had a link that you could go to online, but I don't know if it was part 1 or if it was part 2.
Okay.
But there's actually was 3 parts. The third part had mostly pictures, just lots of old cuts.
Cool.
But,
let's get this one from Katrina. She had one before that she likes to hear the stories about the older breeders. Seems like those type of poultry breeders are very few. They are. I also think a lot of newer people don't know very much about cage training. Might be a great subject to go over sometime on the best ways to cage train. We can start right now. You've got meds. What do you do?
Well, the best thing is to have some old cages and kind of pen them up ahead of time and kind of give them treats if you can and get them used to standing sideways, feed them from like the end and keep their heads up and, just get them used to cages and then play a radio, get them used to people's voices. And if you got dogs or kids, get them used to those things because, they have to be tamed down enough so that they're manageable. And
I tell you one thing I'm doing, and it's been a while because I don't have to do this with Cochran's and Chanticleers, but when I go out there tonight again, before I lock them up, every other one of those dark brown and beggar cockerels will get handled, whether he wants to be or not.
Uh-huh.
And I think Don kind of put that bug in my ear last week is as long as they know, and even a legger, after you pick it up enough times, it's going to finally go submit and just come to you after it gets used to it. So, and I don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about their dad because he'll come get me. But the cockerels haven't got that way yet. So, but tonight I'll go out there. I think there's 12 of them penned up. And I'll handle every one of them and look through them and throw them back in and just get them.
I think you can breed for a calmer temperament too.
You can.
If you grab a hold of a bird and it's a screamer and just continually hollers and is nervous, you don't want to breed from that bird. You're going to get more just like her.
Yeah, I know where they go here. I know after about the third time of that, they're gone. I cannot stand that screeching, screaming shit.
Oh yeah.
No,
some will and some won't.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, I'm pretty bad on evil chickens too. But I mean, if they're nervous and stuff, I have patience. But if they start screaming like you're pulling their head off, you know what happens? You pull their head off.
Yeah.
And it ends that. It dies with them. So that Jeremy has said, at what week should inbred chicks be moved to the range? I don't think inbred's any different than any other bred chick.
I think it might just mean the chicks you're raising.
Yeah.
And you put them out, and usually when the other ones will accept them without a major problem. So it depends on the age of group you're bringing out into the flock and what you've got there. So invariably the old hens will go pick on the younger birds. So you just kind of, when I was doing that, I don't do it much anymore because most of them are separated by age groups, by cockerels and pullets and hens and cocks, and not all together. But you kind of want to introduce them slowly. And if they're out on the range, then they have to have somewhere to get off the range. So you got to make sure that when you introduce them to that they know how to get back into the roost or
right.
you're
You're going
to lock them up.
I always put them in at night. I try to towards evening and put them into wherever they're going, whatever range shelter or whatever you have. They go in there. You just don't chunk their asses out into the wherever they're outside, because you're going out there then and you have to put them away. Well, how about start where they were, and it makes that lock up at night a hell of a lot easier.
He must have game fowl, so it's a little different with them. Oh, there's someone.
There's our man from Perth.
With game fowl is a little different, Jeremy, because the hens tend to be a little aggressive with newer birds coming onto the yard, and your males are all going to be tied out separate. So books on Orpington Bantams. So you just kind of want to introduce those younger pullets if you're putting them out with the hens. I would say, like Mike said, do it at night, and then when you let them out in the morning, watch them, because they're going to fuss a little bit until they get the pecking order established.
You just don't want them all ganging up on one and killing her or beating the shit completely out of her. So, but it usually, if you put them in the evening or at night, and they wake up and get off the roost together, they're better. Now they're still going to be squabbling. That's what they do. They could be together for 6 months, and all of a sudden somebody decides, it's time to overthrow what's her name over there. What's her name don't want to be overthrown. So, you just got to pay attention to those things. That's all part of husbandry. I mean, you got to watch what you're doing. Dan, do you know of any books on Orpington Bantams?
No,
per se?
you'd have to just find them in other books, I guess.
You're going to there. One of the best resources for those, because that is a subject there's not a lot of information on.
ABA.
If you belong to the ABA and you're in the wild apricot section, there's 800 articles on there from the old ABA yearbooks, and several of them are on Orpington Bantams. So if you're an ABA member, you get there for free through your membership portal.
And you want to know how he knows how many there's there?
Yeah,
he put them on there.
I uploaded them one at a time.
I remember that thing. Oh my God, I'm still going.
That's the only documentation of Orpington Bantams that I know of. Even you might be able to find a few articles in the Poultry Press back when J. Ralph Brazelton was going strong. He would write a few, but never been a real popular breed of Bantam. They're coming back now, but For the longest time, we didn't see any. Once J. Ralph got out, he had all the colors, black, white, blue, and buff. And he sold them in the Midwest pretty regular. So we would see a lot in the, I'd say, late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Then they kind of went nowhere, and then now they're coming back. So
yeah. And there are some very nice ones out there.
yeah, I know
especially
Bud Blankenship, the Leger guys, got some really nice black Orpington Bantams.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I've handled some. It
I've seen
takes you a
some
minute.
good whites even. There's some good whites out
Yeah,
there.
there are. There actually are.
That's, that's one we want our friend Jeff Duguay, when he does one of his book conglomerations, maybe we can talk him into, if we got enough Orpington breeders to where he can reference. That would be the thing. Because they're just, there's lots of large fowl Orpington breeders, but probably only a handful of Bantam breeders.
Right. There's other people that have them, but they're not breeders, so to speak. Dan, you have anything else to add?
I think Bud Blankenship asked me one time if I had, there was a black Orpington Bantam picture, I think Schilling did, and he was after that. Now, I don't know whether he's breeding the black Orpington Bantams or not. But
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He is. He has some really good ones. Really nice beam. I made one champion single comb plain nugget a few years ago. Really nice female.
Well, there's no Nankin books either, so.
That's true. They're kind of a special niche.
Well, Katrina's on here. Her husband has them. I never even got into them until I judged the Congress, probably around 2000. And I had got the Nankin National. And up there, they probably had 25 or 30 single combs and maybe that many rose combs. And they had, displays, trios. And that's kind of the first time I had seen them in a while. And now they're kind of spotty coming back. But on the East Coast out there for a long time, they had some really good ones.
Fred Jeffries has them in the Bantam Chickens book. I mean, that's where our first place I ever read about them was there. I mean, besides seeing their picture.
That's about it on Nankins. I don't know. Even in Bantam Chickens, I think most of that was referenced from Europe.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was one. What's her name?
He worked real tight with
what was her name?
Banning Volpool.
Volpool or something.
Yeah, she was from Europe, but she was here in California, and she helped them when they did the 65 standard. Help them bring in some of those breeds that we didn't have here,
and we still don't have.
Yeah, we still don't have some of them. Yeah, but that was one that we did actually have here. It just has never been a real. It seems to be spotty. And for years, the only place I ever seen them was on the East Coast at the Congress up that way. Finger Lakes, the New York shows in that way, but rarely did we see them even at Columbus.
Jeremy, you might want to take up
Kenny.
Kenny, yes.
Kenny and Nancy's podcast, and go to the Breeders Academy, and I think you'll be very well served there. Kenny would be the one to ask about that, because that's part of his thing, man. And so I would go there because I can't answer that question, but maybe they can for you. So you can find them on Facebook and YouTube, but you can go on YouTube and you can watch their stuff. They have lives at least once a week, and they have a Breeders Academy, and they cover about everything you can imagine on game fowl, because that's what they do.
Yeah, and I think we talked with Kenny when we had him on here. So I don't know in my 50-some years that I have ever more than once or twice seen true inbreeding depression, because normally when you see it, it's too late. Once you have it, you're not raising anything, and it's pretty much not going to be too long before you're out. So true inbreeding depression is going to cause poor laying, poor fertility, poor hatchability, poor livability, all those things. It's not going to make you a very big flock. So I think we jump the gun a lot of times. We think it's inbreeding, and then we want to jump to an outcross when that may not be the problem. It may just be we're not selecting the right birds to begin with. I think that's
I agree.
Paraphrasing Kenny.
I agree. And Katrina says that Mark Fields wrote a book on Nankins.
Boy, I sure don't know if I've ever
know.
seen it.
No, I don't know either, Katrina.
I know he did the Dominic book, and
I believe you, but I've never
seen it.
I've never seen that book. I don't know if it was a big seller.
My best Mark Field story, I don't think I'd ever met him before, and I was out in California. I was either at Roseville or Modesto or one of those places. Over the years, they've had the Pacific Poultry Breeder Show, but I did Modern Games for Jim and Bonnie, and then they said, well, how about you do the Dominic National, and here's your clerk, Mark Fields. Oh, no pressure here. So we judged a nice class of Dominic Large Valley and Bantam. I think Dominic Bantam was reserved rose-comb clean leg, as a matter of fact. So he knew that. Well, you hang on to that, Katrina, because it's probably one of the few out there.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
No,
Maybe
I didn't
they
know.
should reprint it.
Yeah, there we go. If there's a demand, we'll reprint it.
Yep. Yeah, we know some guys that might be.
We know some. All we need. Well, it's easy to do when people are no longer with us. I found with the Ralph Sturgeon book that we reprinted. So
say the name so that the orders go up for that again. Then Kevin can say, "Damn you, Matt! You said it again."
Yeah, start where you are with what you have. It's a very simplistic book, and you'd had to know Ralph to know that's how he was. And yeah, Mark was a good guy. I miss him because we emailed at least once a week about something he was trying to do, or books to, like Dan does with me sometimes too. Some book that maybe I seen or I knew where they were. And Mark had a great book collection. I don't know what has happened to that since he's passed, but he did have he was like Dan. He is a vast collector of all those old resources that are drying up and getting, every time one of us dies, they all get thrown away, I think is what happens to it.
Any other questions out there?
There we go. She says,
oh, it used to be available.
Yeah, he worked with them like Don Schreider did for a while, I think. It's not available there anymore. So,
Jim, I don't know how many, maybe.
There's about, so you can go to Watt's publishing site so I love that picture he did of the Narragansett turkey. Always did. Well, Watts did reprints of those pictures, and you could order them from their site. Now, I haven't been there for a couple of years, but I was able to get, it's in a box still, because of course I got no place to hang it, but I got a 2x3 of the Schilling Narragansetts, and they use new technology, but they actually reprint those prints onto that thing. So any of those ones that are available that's in the Watt collection, you could get it.
The book is called The Nankin Bantam by Mark Fields. Well, that would be a very good name for a Nankin book.
Yeah, there's a good deal. It's a good book.
Yeah.
So there's one that I laughed because Ralph used to sell those at the shows. That's how I got my first one. They were $5. That was a lot of money in the day. But
in the 70s.
He had to do a reprint because he run out. Well, when they did the reprint, they stapled it wrong. So the pages weren't in order. So when you was reading that book, you'd have to, that's what he was talking about. Yeah. So when we redid it, we got it all back in the correct order so you could read it.
Yeah, it's a very common sense book. I think everybody should have it. I mean, you may know that stuff. You may know it, not do that stuff and get in trouble and wonder why. Go back to the book. But I really like the title. I always have. Start wherever you are with what you have. Sometimes the things that you want.
Well, Dan, remember, there was a time when that's the only option you had, because I think the birds are a lot more readily available now with all of our technology and internet and Facebook and all the stuff. You can see birds and get different birds a lot easier than in the old days where you used to have to send a letter and hopefully they had them and you wait a couple of weeks to get it back. So it's a little different time, I think, for getting birds. So you've got better birds available. So a lot of them don't have to start with what they're doing that, but they're doing it at a higher level. Let's put it that way.
When I was down at Marcus's, he had showed me what he used to send out to his customers. He had like a index card, and he would take feathers and weave it through a couple of cuts in the index card,
Yep.
and label it as saddle or hackle, and he would send that to the customer for their approval.
That was very common with it. I've got a bunch of them. Well, no, I don't. I give them to Newt. But a bunch of the Rhode Island red breeders would do that. They would send you hackle feathers and saddle feathers and tail feathers, and they'd be a whole, they'd put it inside a sleeve or something, but there'd be a whole sleeve of just red feathers. And that's how they, if you were looking for a certain thing, sometimes that's what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore.
No.
Yeah, that's
I wouldn't trust the post office to get it to them in the first place.
yeah, before they aged out. Well, I'm glad that some of the books got to you, Katrina, so we know they're in good hands.
Yep. Yep. Well, gentlemen, should we wrap this up?
Yep, I can't think of anything else. ABA yearbook, they called for our
Address.
articles, so that's usually about the end. So it should be. They're hoping to have it to the printers and out next month. So look for it in August. I think the APA is already at the printers, I believe. So Jeff wrapped that up pretty quick this year.
Imagine that. But anyhow, Dan, thanks for being with us. I really
my
enjoyed
pleasure.
this. We'd like to get you back on again. I think we could probably talk, Lord knows how long. Because you have all the, I mean, you wrote, you got the books put together, so you read the articles. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that we could bring out. And this is just kind of a gloss over everything, but I'm really glad you're on here, and I hope people learn something on buff. We get a lot of buff questions, and it is not an exact science. It's no matter how long you have them. I mean, we had you, and we had Tom in the chat. I mean, goodness gracious, there was a lot of, I suppose, between us three and Tom in there, there's a lot of years. I don't really want to add them up on how long we've had buffs, and it's still,
Yes,
it's an
It's
adventure
still
I always
every
tell
year.
everybody it's the hardest color there is to raise, and
yeah.
I've had them all.
Yep, they say them solid colored birds are easy to raise.
Oh,
They've
yeah.
never raised buff. and listen, black and white ain't that easy. When you get into the fine points, it's not that easy either. But they've never had buff, and until that you really spent 10 or 15 years with them, you either appreciate them or it's
Cuss them every
no.
day.
Yeah, you cuss them, but you're there. It's kind of like
Yeah.
blue. You know, I've always had a thing, so is Matt, for bluebirds, and I like lace birds, and I've had them a lot. It's one of those, and I keep getting them back every now and then. It's like, damn, it's like an addiction. Like there's got to be a way to solve this problem. And as of yet, I have not solved that problem. I thought I have a few times, and it doesn't actually work.
Again, it's very similar to buff. The
Yep.
good ones come in bunches of one.
Right.
And they tend to not they tend to not be a good breeder when you do get that good one, because everything that comes out of them isn't any better than what you had. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. Like I said, Dan, thank you.
Well, you're
thanks-
welcome. Thank you.
We appreciate it, and we'd love to get you back on again.
Oh, sure. Yep.
I think these things would be really good. It's so many, when we start talking like this, I'm thinking, this would be a fantastic January or February, just start and go, because it's cold here. It's cold, and you've got your chores done. You're not spending a shitload of time out there, and it's just, and you haven't been to a show for a while. I say that, but I think we're living in Alabama in February and part of March. But anyhow, because of so many shows down there, but for the majority of the people, it's like that knowledge comes and you're getting ready to breed, and you're thinking about breeding pens. And I think that'd be a great time just to come on and just let it roll.
I remember at one of the shows, Don Schreider was there, and somebody was talking about the old timers, and he says, "We're now the old timers."
Yes,
We are. Yeah, we're not the kids anymore. It's like I called someone and said, "Man, he was a crotchety old bastard. I thought, oh, crap, we're the crotchety old bastards.
Yeah.
I have to watch when I bring up somebody's name anymore. I think, well, they're no longer with us.
Right.
It's getting scary to where that list is getting shorter.
Yeah.
But the thing is about what we try to do here and what you do is it's that you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been,
Right.
and how all that has come together. And I do think that we were privileged and blessed to know.
So
Maybe
many
at the time we sort of thought, but now we know that we rubbed shoulders and got to talk with the people that actually made it what it is.
Right.
Another one up your way, Charlie Burmaster. I
Yes.
was trying to think of all the Leghorn guys I remember
Yeah.
from
Man,
up
Charlie
that way.
lay it to him, man.
Yep.
Yeah, Henry Alp was another one.
Yeah.
Oh
Little
yeah,
guy.
Alpha Mania, baby.
Yes. You know, he used to say that his birds, people would find fault with their too much plumage, you know, too profuse. Well, he said that my pullets and my cockerels seldom lost because they had that extra that the competition didn't have.
Didn't have, yeah.
Right.
And so I thought, well, you know, he's got a point there.
Yeah, boy, his cockbirds. That
Yeah,
boy,
you would have to
cockbirds. I've
see
never
one.
seen saddles on them, anything like those.
If you've got old poultry presses, look for Henry Alf and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they.
Well, they say that Dan Young put White Phoenix into his birds at least 2 different times. And matter of fact, one guy by the name of Dan Boone said that he sold some whites that came out of his silvers to Dan Young, and that was in the 40s. And there was a book written, I think it was All Breeds by Platt, and it said that Dan Young had done it then, and that was 1925. So he had at least put that long tail into his white leghorns twice. And of course, Henry and Lee Marsh got their birds from Dan Young.
Yep.
And so they kind of, you know, perpetuated that longer saddle and tail because they liked it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, well, and it give them some, give people something to bitch about. You know, they liked it, and when they got their rear ends beat by it, they really hated it. It's because they couldn't do it.
One time when Lee Marsh was up, he was telling me stories about Madison Square Garden, and I was telling him that I'd seen a picture in Poultry Press of this beautiful trio, which I think is probably one of the nicest typed leghorns I'd seen, and it was Oakdale's birds. And he said, well, you know something? I judged that class. And sure enough, the old Poultry Press, I went back there and it said he had judged that class and those particular birds. And I thought that was kind of amazing.
Number one, he remembered it. And,
right. But, you know, then those days, if you were a member of a club and they wanted you to judge, you didn't have to be an APA judge. And he wasn't, but you know, he certainly was qualified to know leghorns.
There was a lot of excellent judges that never had any license except they've done it.
I don't think Henry Miller ever had one.
No, he didn't have a license.
Choice Culver, a lot of those old time string guys, they just made them judges because they knew. That's how Wilbur got. Wilbur didn't become a judge till later in life.
Yep.
He was still busy up until probably his early 60s. He was still running the string pretty heavy. So
Yep. But all them guys that like Wilbur, you know, like Leghorns. I mean, his dad, or was it his uncle?
There wasn't no relation.
Okay, but they were just from the same area.
Yeah, his dad was the Muscovy
guy. Yep. But I mean, they grew up with it. They knew.
You know, I think his father did. Wasn't that Elton Stauffer?
Yeah, Elton had whites, I think.
He had whites, but there was another Russell or something
Russell
that
had light brown.
Dark,
yes,
yeah.
Russell had light brown.
Russell wasn't any relation, but Elton
right.
had
that we know of. But you know, it was Ohio when it was Central Ohio.
I have a lot of Russell's stuff, so you know, in the day he was a pretty big seller of light brown leghorns. So he had a catalog and letterhead, and I don't know, it was in an auction somewhere on eBay. I got a whole bunch of Russell Stauffer somewhere around here of his birds from the time, and I would say he would do very well nowadays. The birds that he had pictures of, anyways, were pretty nice.
Another one that had a nice catalog was Grove Hill, Hillary Bright, and I'd read an
Actually-
article that he had written, and he originally, somebody called him a pocket breeder because he bought a lot of his birds. Well, he was highly insulted, and so he decided he was going to breed his own birds. And he said that breeding was just a accumulation of little things that added up to big things. And after 60 years of breeding the Browns, he proved that. But his
I actually
birds-
have one of his old white leghorn catalogs that I actually took the cuts out of them and had them framed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those birds. Neil Graspel always says that leghorn has to have a style. Well,
Yes.
they did. They did,
Uh-huh.
definitely all of them. And I think they were why I had them framed. They were Sewell's that were in that catalog. Sewell had done the pictures for his catalog. But another great catalog where you could go through there and select eggs out of this mating. And I think they were $3 or $4 a piece. And like the 1900s, that had to be a god awful amount of money for a hatching egg. But those guys, they knew how to market. I will give them that for the time.
Oh yeah, they did. I mean, you know, I was in White Wyandottes big for a long time, and if you look back at those guys that had big White Wyandottes, I mean, they'd parade them out. Here's the cock heading pen 1, you know, first at Madison Square Garden. I mean, they give the whole run. I mean, it was amazing.
Even Wade Fullington, when we were younger,
Yes.
he would do his mating list every year and mail that out. And
Yeah.
he would tell about all of his pens, and I don't know if there was pictures or not, but I think I've still got a couple around here somewhere. But he would describe every mating and what he was trying to do with it and how much those eggs were. And Ralph did the same thing. I know Thompson did at one time too. So
I think John Martin with the white Wyandottes in Canada.
Yeah.
John Martin had the White Wyandottes, and his brother had the White Rocks.
Uh-huh.
Or no, that was Fishel in Indiana. There was 2 brothers. One did White Rocks and one did White Wyandottes, and they were both very good.
And it seemed that Canada Dorcas.
Yeah, that's Martin.
That's Martin. Yeah.
Was that him? Yeah, that
Dorcas.
Beautiful catalog.
Oh, beautiful birds, man.
Yeah.
They were absolutely stunning. And it's the same way. I mean, that's the way Fullington. I grew up there, and I was there a lot. It just amazed me. I loved going through that. You know, he was one of the crotchety old bastards, you know, like we are now.
Yeah.
But I mean, but he would take time and tell me and little conditioning things, and those were good days. We didn't know how good those days were. I always said that's the problem with memories, is you look back and you're thinking, man, why didn't I? And you had a really good time, but when you're having that good time, you don't realize how good a time you're having or the information. And I think that's what we try to get across here too, is you got to treasure those. You got to find a way to treasure those moments that you get.
I had
these things.
Ian Knickerbocker and Ralph Knickerbocker were
Oh.
close neighbors. One
my.
had the coach in Bantams, and the other one had Rhode Island Reds.
Reds, yeah.
And my father went to school with Valentine Thompson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he told me. Yeah. So,
That was the son, wasn't it?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have one of his. So he took over when his dad died
Right.
for
Yes.
a couple years.
Yes.
And I have one of his catalogs too. And it was kind of towards the end, commercial industry kicking in and all that. So, but I do have one of his.
One of Thompson's old catalogs, he had I guess it was 4 birds, 2 pairs of barred rocks that were done by Sewell. And I was always hoping to see that painting floating around Amenia somewhere, but who knows where it ever went.
I've got the cut from that catalog.
Yeah.
I think he used it in about every year
Yeah.
for quite a while. But yeah, it's funny because I don't know. I'm sure it's somewhere, but
Yeah. You hate to think somebody would throw that stuff out, but
yeah, and it's I screwed up years ago. I was in Grable, Indiana, and walked into an antique shop, and there was a picture of 3 Irish setters out in a field, and at the bottom of it said A.O. Schilling.
oh, really?
Oh yeah, it was beautiful. It was probably 3 by 5. It was a great big oil painting of 3 Irish setters, which is my favorite dog, and it was $500, and this was in the 80s, and I just couldn't bring myself to buy it at the time, and I actually went back for it, and it was gone. So But I wish now I kicked myself in the butt because he did do some dogs and horses and
Right.
cattle and
Yeah,
other stuff.
There was one guy told me that he had seen a calendar that Schilling had done when he went to Boston. He stayed with somebody up that way, and it was Asher cattle
Yep.
pasture.
Yes,
scene.
I've
He
seen
said
that.
Did you? Where did you ever see that?
No, I've just seen pictures of it.
I've seen
Really?
it. It was big in the time for Ayrshire. It was in like their breed catalogs. He
Oh,
would
Is that
really?
where it was? I know
Yeah.
I've seen it.
I have never seen it. I just heard about it. You know.
Oh no, it's beautiful.
Yep.
I know
It's beautiful.
Lee Marsh supposedly had one of his Jersey bulls painted by Schilling. The one had the big show out in, was it Chicago?
Yeah.
Probably they
50s,
used to
I
have a
think,
huge show
In
there.
the Royal Winter Fair in Canada. I think it was a bull that he bred and raised, and he had Schilling painted, which I never seen it because I think he had it down in his office. And I hadn't been to his law office, but he did take a trio of buffs out to the Ohio National back in the 80s for me. And he had me take them down to his place about 3 weeks before the show. And he washed them up. And he said, from now on, you're going to have to wash your birds like 5 days ahead of time. He says it makes a big difference in them, you know. And then you had to wait for the feathers to settle down because they're too fluffy if you took them immediately. But yeah, he said it calmed them down, and they did very well out there, I guess. So he was showing out there as bantams anyway, so he just took them along. But
Good deal.
you know,
Good deal. Excellent. Well, gentlemen,
All right. I'll play the ads.
all right.
Everybody have a
bye.
good
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.